according to the latest from the White House, it looks like these are not foreign drones. They were not sent by any adversarial nation. Based on their records, these are all American drones that were either sent by organizations that they are aware of. The claim is that the government knows who put these drones out, or by some government agencies, and that's to monitor the landscape. And so the claim is that there is nothing unusual about these drones from the White House as of this morning. Of course, we should always monitor the sky because the government does not always know what's going on there. There were 3 reports from the Director of National Intelligence over the past 3 years that argue that there are lots of reports from military personnel and intelligence agencies of objects that they cannot identify. And there was this office established in the Pentagon, the ARROW, or Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, looking back at those reports. And even though they were able to identify most of the reports as mundane, 97% or so, there are still a few percent that are not fully understood. So, it's possible there are objects in the sky that are not what we think they are. And the question is, are they human-made, or did they arrive here from another star? And of course, to find out, we need better data. This is a question that can be addressed with better instruments and monitoring the sky. And in fact, we built an observatory at Harvard University under the Galileo project that I'm leading. And it's obtaining now data on 100,000 objects every month.
You mentioned the White House's statement from this morning. Yesterday, President-elect Trump, who apparently has likely been getting the same briefings as President Biden, kind of hinted that there was something else going on, and he said he would not be going to New Jersey this weekend due to these strange occurrences. Do you think this is just political statements to rile people up?
No, I think fundamentally, President Trump is trying to be as sincere as possible, but he cannot reveal his sources of information. Of course, they are classified. He must be getting briefings because in just a month he's supposed to become the president, and therefore he needs to be up to date on all the briefings. And so he just cannot reveal the sources of information. And I think, my sense is that he's just telling the truth.
And I also heard the Pentagon say out of 5,000 reports, about 100 are accurate as unidentified, which I guess would be about 2%. Do you think with even 2% that they still haven't been able to figure out what they are, that they could put out a blanket statement like this is nothing to worry about?
Yeah, I mean, if they understand most of the events, they would say there is nothing to worry about. But of course, one has to keep in mind that, even if 1% or even if 1 in 1,000, I mean, there are 1 million drones right now, according to them, over the sky of the US. And, it's sufficient to have even a few out of those that are of potential significance for national security for us to be worried about. So for them to make this, obviously they're trying to calm those people who are nervous about it. But I think the main question that everyone has in mind is whether it represents a national security risk. And we know from the experience with the Chinese spy balloon that the authorities are not always aware even of big things, and it takes them a while to respond to them. And so really what all of this is telling us is that they should do a better job.
The one thing that I found unusual about the Chinese spy balloon is that there was 3 other objects shot down after that, and they never released really any footage or pictures like they did of the spy balloon of what those other objects were.
Yeah. So one thing to keep in mind is the government has much more information than we are aware of. And the reason is very simple. They're spending nearly $1 trillion a year on the defense budget. that's a huge amount of money. It's about a third of the total expenditure of on defense or military worldwide. The U.S. spends one third of the worldwide allocation to defense, which is about $2.4 trillion. And so obviously they have a lot of information. There is an array of satellites monitoring the ground. They could see objects that are big enough, bigger than a person. They can definitely resolve them. And I'm sure they looked at the ground from up in space, from satellites, to figure out these drones, if they're big enough. They also have information from all kinds of stations, on monitoring stations on the ground. But they will not reveal that information because they don't want adversarial nations to be aware of the capabilities of the US. So now the question is, when should they release information to the public? And they're extremely cautious about that. And that's why we don't hear much. But I'm sure behind the scenes, they're really trying to figure out every detail about these drones and about any other national security threat. They will not tell us because for two reasons. One, they do not want to expose the level of intelligence the US gets. And we see, of course, how capable the US government is when alerting, for example, for a launch of ballistic missiles from Iran, back in April towards Israel. There was also a lot of information that was gathered on the war in Ukraine. I mean, the intelligence agencies did an excellent job in alerting the US president before it happened. And so we know that they know quite a lot, and that is coming into light during very stressful situations, politically speaking. But they do it all the time. And they are extremely cautious and careful as to what to release to the public. They also want to calm down everyone, and therefore it's quite natural for them to say everything is under control. It's just like a parent telling their kids not to worry about anything, even though that they know that there could be a risk here.